I bet you can play wonderfully, mother-in-law. My eldest son's wife, Lulu, smirked as she said this to me. She probably intends to embarrass me in this family gathering. Lulu, her only pride being her light conservatory background, is desperate to seize the grand piano in my house. I too have reached the end of my patience. My name is Mira Brown and I just turned 60 this year. My husband has already passed away, and my 3 sons each have families of their own. I currently live alone in a mansion that is far too large for one person. I'm an elderly person living alone, though fortunately, my eldest son and his wife live nearby. It's comforting to know that my eldest son Scott wants me to consult with him if I have any problems. Perhaps it would be best to sell this mansion and move into an apartment or condominium that's suitable for one person. But there's a reason I can't move. It's the grand piano that my late husband gifted to me. As long as this piano is here, I don't think I'll ever leave this mansion. But this grand piano is causing a lot of friction. The name of Scott's wife is Lulu, and she is the one causing the problem. She's the kind of woman who flaunts her elite music university education, and I found her a bit difficult to deal with since we first met. However, I didn't impose my opinion as she's the woman my son chose. My eldest son and his wife got married hastily due to her pregnancy, but after they got married, it turns out that she was mistaken about being pregnant. I was dumbfounded, but my kind-hearted eldest son, saying things like, "Everyone makes mistakes," comforted her. Men don't understand the ulterior motives that women can have. I think Lulu really wanted to marry Scott. I don't mean to boast as a mother, but Scott is tall, high-earning, and handsome. He's also very gentle and kind. I just can't bring myself to like her when I think she took advantage of Scott's kindness. It seems Lulu finds me difficult to deal with as well. She tries to act respectful to me as a mother-in-law, but I can see through to her belittling me in heart. It probably comes from the fact that I play the piano as a hobby. I've never played the piano in front of her. She's challenged me several times by saying things like, "I would love to hear you play," but I've always turned it down. I play the piano in memory of my late husband. That's how it's always been and will continue to be. I didn't want to explain this to her over and over. How could she laugh in such a sneering, mocking way and still sit in front of the piano? I'm truly fed up with being told this every time we meet. Last week, Lulu gave me a hard time again. It is comforting that we live close to each other, but it's a bit problematic because we share the same neighbors. Lulu loves gossip and has a habit of spreading baseless rumors. When she and Scott just got married, she told the neighbors that I was strongly against the marriage and that she had a miscarriage due to the stress, which was a complete fabrication. She was never pregnant in the first place, and a miscarriage was impossible, not to mention the stress of being opposed to marriage. She was trying to portray herself as a tragic heroine by making me out to be the villain. "Lulu, aren't you spreading lies about me to the neighbors?" Even though they were newly married, I found it impossible to turn a blind eye to this. I confronted her. Lulu looked a tad guilty, but eventually, she seemed to brazen it out with her typical smirk playing around her lips. "Mother-in-law, this is so unfair. I don't know where you heard such rumors, but it's unfair to trust the words of others more than you trust me. Am I not a part of the family yet?" The slick-tongued Lulu started to approach me, making it look as if I was the one at fault, even resorting to the act of welling up her eyes with tears. I was stunned at her audacity, the nerve of her lying and evading the issue with such a shameless boldness. My son Scott also came to know about this, and gently I found myself being the one chastised, much to my chagrin. But considering this was happening so soon after their wedding, I eventually decided to let it slide and leave it unresolved. With a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law dispute, I was always going to be the one at a disadvantage. Rather than having another baseless rumor spread, I decided to endure this one. And then recently, a similar situation occurred. One morning, the neighborhood ladies who were chatting in front of the house quickly changed their expressions as soon as they saw me. From their reactions, I had a hunch that something had happened. It was the exact same response as before. Good morning, as I greeted them. They dispersed like startled spiders. I felt that another strange rumor was being circulated. As soon as I returned home, I reached out to the neighbor I was most friendly with. I'm sorry for calling so early in the morning. While explaining the incident, I asked her if another strange rumor about me was being spread. She hesitated but then informed me about the rumor that I was responsible for shortening my husband's life. An absolutely baseless rumor. The gossip detailed that I had a penchant for extravagance and my husband had to continue working even after his retirement, leading to his death from overwork. But my husband had already passed away by the time Lulu became my daughter-in-law, and she shouldn't have any basis to speak about him. Upon hearing my explanation, my friend agreed with me. He would play a part in clearing the misunderstanding with the neighbors. This gave me some relief as I felt that the spread of the rumor would be prevented. However, once I was relieved, my anger towards Lulu started bubbling up again. After her marriage, Lulu quit her job to become a full-time housewife. She seemed bored during the day, so she'd often gather the young neighborhood wives and engage in gossip. She probably used some made-up rumor about me as fodder for their daily chit-chat. The fact that she used my dear late husband for entertainment was unbearable. I finished breakfast and decided to pay a visit to my eldest son's home. I arrived at Scott's house around 9:30 a.m., I believe. Scott had already left for work. When I called out from the front door, Lulu, with her hair all disheveled, appeared from the bedroom. "What, Lulu? You just woke up?" I was taken aback and raised my voice unintentionally. "Mama, mother-in-law, it's quite inconvenient if you come over without informing me beforehand. What's the matter so early in the morning?" Lulu, just woken up and seemingly grumpy, muttered her complaints. The living room was in a mess, clearly not well cleaned. Even though I lived close by, I try not to interfere with my son and daughter-in-law's life, and so I rarely visit their home. However, the current situation is unbearable. I'm sorry I didn't get in touch. It was an emergency situation. I apologize. After offering an apology for not getting in touch, I get down to the matter at hand. Couldn't you have resolved it over the phone? Why bother coming all the way here? She seems profoundly bothered by my visit. She sits deep into the couch in her pajamas, crossing her legs. It almost feels like she's looking down on me. Standing in front of Lulu, I suppress the anger that's swelling up inside of me. I cautiously ask her about the rumor without raising my voice. Then she snorts, "Oh, that? Lol. Could you please explain what you mean? I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't spread strange rumors." Ha! But it's the truth, isn't it? Lulu grins again, stating her point. On what basis are you claiming such a thing? I lose my cool due to her attitude, and my tone gets harsher, yet she remains unperturbed. The grand piano is the proof. You pestered your husband to get it for you, didn't you? I've never seen you playing it. LOL. Lulu insinuates that I had whimsically made my husband buy a grand piano that I don't even play. She understands the value of that piano, of course. Being a music college graduate, don't you think it's a sheer waste to beg for a piano that you can't even play? I'm starting to feel sorry for my father-in-law. Lol. Lulu completely mocks me. I am at a loss for words due to her audacity. Seeing me silent, she laughs. Can't rebuttal because it's true. I find it impossible to discuss my precious memories with my husband with this woman. It feels as if our cherished memories would be tarnished, so I could do nothing but stay silent. Going silent when the going gets tough. I stand up from the sofa and say to Lulu, "Sorry for disturbing you." She laughs in a victorious manner. As I exit the living room, her high-pitched laughter pierces my back. I feel frustrated and tearful when I get home. Since that rumor incident, I've been keeping a distance from my eldest son and his wife. Honestly, I don't want to see Lulu ever again. I do feel sorry for my sons, God. However, Thinking about my son being stuck in the middle of this mother-in-law, daughter-in-law issue and struggling, I believe that the best solution is for me not to approach Lulu. Regardless of how much you try to avoid, there are times when avoidance isn't possible. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day are such times. On top of that, this year I will be turning 60. Scott called to celebrate my milestone birthday. My sons and their wives living out of state in places like Texas or Minnesota seem to be coming home as well. They are planning to gather all the relatives, including my husband's sister, and celebrate my 60th birthday. I am truly happy to see my out-of-state children, their spouses, and my grandchildren after a long time. I have no choice but to turn a blind eye to Lulu just for this day. I kept telling myself that. From the day before the birthday celebration, the grandchildren living out of state started returning home one after another, making the house bustling with activity. Usually being alone, the sudden increase in people almost made my head spin. The grandkids were all lively, running around the mansion. Among them, one girl, the daughter of my second son, quietly gazed at my piano. "Do you like the piano?" When I asked, my granddaughter nodded. I remembered being consulted by my daughter-in-law about her being shy and reserved. Apparently, she was having trouble making friends even in kindergarten, and it was a cause for concern. "You want to try playing?" At my words, my granddaughter's face lit up brightly. As I opened the lid of the piano, she reached out hesitantly. When I sat her on the chair, she asked in a tiny voice, "Can I play it?" My granddaughter pressed a key with her small finger, and a beautiful sound echoed. The spreading sound seemed to surprise her, and she repeated pressing the keys many times, closing her eyes to feel the spread and echo of the sound. Looking at her side profile, I thought I wouldn't mind leaving the piano to this girl. Hearing the sound of the piano, my daughter-in-law appeared, saying, "Sorry, mother-in-law." Seeing her own mother suddenly appear, my granddaughter seemed surprised, returning from her world of sound. "It seems like she likes the piano. Is she taking piano lessons?" When I asked my daughter-in-law, she replied that they hadn't started her on piano lessons yet. They couldn't afford it. She said my second son's family had many kids. They were raising 5 children. It must be true that they are financially strained. "I see. You should rely on me more. Don't hesitate." My daughter-in-law nodded happily at my words and bowed her head, saying thank you. I wished Lulu was a bit like her. I was wondering who was playing. Lulu said loudly as she entered the room without hesitation. She glanced at my granddaughter sitting at the piano and scolded, "It's not a toy. It's not a piano for a child to touch. You don't know its value and you can't play it, you audacious child." Lulu attempted to push my granddaughter away, who was sitting in front of the piano. My granddaughter seemed to think she was being scolded and got off the chair with a scared look. She then hid behind my daughter-in-law. "This piano is not for anyone but musicalites like me to touch. It's not a toy for children and certainly not for the elderly either." Her last statement was likely a sarcastic remark aimed at me. My daughter-in-law quietly bowed to Lulu and took my granddaughter to the yard. Lulu, whom I had been watching them leave with her arms crossed, tried to sit on the now empty chair in front of the piano. I hastily closed the lid of the piano. I really didn't want her touching my precious piano. It was a spur-of-the-moment reaction, and Lulu glared at me. "This piano holds precious memories with my husband. I don't want someone who would push a child aside to play it to touch it. I'm sorry." Facing Lulu's glare, I smiled sweetly. She clicked her tongue. She must have felt my strong will to not let her play. "Let me be frank. Since it's a good opportunity, this piano is wasted on you, mother-in-law. Don't you think it'd be more fitting for someone like me? I'd be happy to take it off your hands." Her eyes did not reflect the joviality of her words. It was clear that Lulu was serious. The next night, a party was held to celebrate my 60th birthday with all relatives gathering. It had been a long time since everyone had come back home, apart from my eldest son and his wife. My children and their spouses were at the forefront, organizing a grand celebration for my milestone birthday. It was a bit embarrassing to put on the red cardigan they gifted me, but being celebrated by everyone was much more pleasant than I had anticipated. The celebration was made even more lively with a musical gift from my grandchildren. As everyone clapped at the end of the grandchildren's performance, Lulu suddenly chimed in. "That's right. Let's have the mother-in-law play the piano." Her suggestion seemed spur of the moment, but I could tell she had been waiting for this opportunity to embarrass me. At Lulu's words, my sons joined in. "We've never heard you play." I had only played the piano when it was just my husband and me. My children had never heard me perform with such a marvelous piano in possession. "Mother-in-law, you must be quite the player," she said with her signature smirk. "I would only be a displeasure to your ears, and it'd be embarrassing to perform during such a celebration." I tried to escape the situation with a harmless brush-off, but Lulu kept pressing on. "Oh, so you got such an expensive piano, but can't play? That would mean you're quite the spendthrift. Guess the rumors were true, huh?" At her continual taunts, even my eldest son, normally quite reserved, raised his voice. "Hey now!" But Lulu was not one to be quieted by such words. Scott looked at me with a troubled expression. "I suppose it can't be helped. I'll make an exception today." Unable to bear seeing my son's troubled face, I started walking towards the piano. A quick patter of small footsteps followed, and my granddaughter, who loved the piano, clung to my side. She was clearly looking forward to hearing me play, her cheeks slightly flushed with anticipation. I wondered what kind of performance it would be, 3 blind mice at best, I assume. As I opened the piano lid and took my seat, Lulu sneered. Her attitude caused the daughters-in-law to furrow their brows. Lulu was not particularly liked among them. She always took full advantage of her status as the wife of the eldest son, often looking down on the others. The piano keys, which I hadn't touched in a while, felt cold and comforting. Since I had it tuned regularly, the piano was always ready to be played. After warming up my wrists, I let my fingers dance across the keys. The first piece I chose was Chopin's Ballad No. 4 in F minor, Opus No. 52. From its serene beginning to the technically demanding parts, it is a challenging piece. Lulu appeared to recognize the piece as soon as I started playing and froze with a shocked expression on her face. Playing the piano after a long time somehow made all the unpleasant things feel irrelevant. I played several technically challenging pieces my husband loved and ended with a jazz arrangement of a popular cartoon theme song that my children loved. The moment all the performances were over, my entire family cheered and applauded me. My little granddaughter wrapped her arms around my knee, excitedly exclaiming, "Awesome, awesome." The only one who seemed discontent among the relatives was Lulu. I flashed her a warm smile. So it was true that Mom was a pianist. I thought Dad was joking. My eldest son Scott commented with a hint of excitement in his voice. I had made sure that my children, especially Scott, would never discover that I was a pianist. After graduating from the Vienna Conservatory, I had started my journey as a pianist, and that's when I met my husband and gave birth to Scott. When my mother-in-law forced me to choose between the piano and my husband, I chose my husband and Scott after much anguish. To ensure that Scott wouldn't feel burdened by this, my husband and I hid this truth. After I declared I would never touch the piano again, my husband bought this piano for me, asking that I play only for him. I later found out that my mother-in-law also played a role in purchasing the piano. It seemed they bought this piano, replacing the dream they had taken away from me. To me, this piano was a precious item that affirmed the bond with my husband and the love from my mother-in-law. I had no intention of handing it over to someone who merely desired its monetary value. By the way, I don't think I've ever heard Lulu play. Mom, would it be okay if Lulu played a piece? Scott asked me. What? Isn't Lulu a graduate from a top music school? You've never heard her play? I was somewhat surprised by Scott's words. Then I remembered there's no piano at Scott and Lulu's house. That did seem unusual. Lulu, would you mind playing something? I'd love to hear it too. I stood up from the chair in front of the piano, intending to let Lulu take my place. But Lulu didn't sit down. Just the other day, she was leaning back comfortably in this chair, and now she seemed to recoil in fear. She was pale. I'm not feeling well today, she excused herself, trying to escape the situation. Not feeling well after all that food and drink? Or is there another reason you can't play the piano? I couldn't believe it, and I decided to confront her. Lulu mumbled some excuses. You wouldn't lie about graduating from a top music school, would you? Lulu flinched at my words. What? Was I right? Have you been lying about everything except the pregnancy? I unintentionally raised my voice. Lulu's face turned pale. She looked like she was about to faint. You're not telling me you lied about graduating from a top music school. Scott also questioned, Lulu's seemingly surprised. Lulu fell silent as if she had forgotten how to speak. Our youngest 3-year-old grandchild toddled over, pulling out the leaflet from Lulu's back pocket. She handed it to me innocently, saying, Here, maybe she was trying to diffuse the tension in her own small way. I smiled at her, saying thank you, and took the leaflet only to be shocked. The leaflet was advertising a high-priced used piano purchase service. The likely phone-confirmed purchase price was scribbled on the leaflet in ballpoint pen. Lulu, you were planning to sell my piano? I couldn't hold it back anymore. I yelled at Lulu and showed the leaflet to the relatives. The whole family peered at the leaflets, staring at Lulu in disbelief. She seemed unable to bear their gaze and ran home as if escaping. The person who suffered the most from this commotion was my eldest son, Scott. The wife he had always believed in had been proven to be a big liar. We couldn't find the right words to comfort Scott afterwards. Scott and Lulu divorced. It seemed that Scott had reached his limit with Lulu's incessant lies. Moreover, Lulu had a habit of spending extravagantly and was secretly in deep debt. She apparently planned to repay the debt with the money from selling my piano. Once Scott found out about Lulu's debt repayment plan, he immediately filed for divorce. Lulu, who had lived a merry life full of lies, was now jobless and supposedly hiding out at her parents' home. I hear debt collectors are visiting her parents' house daily. I decided to open a small piano school afterwards. Some neighborhood kids are attending, and the piano seems to emit a joyous sound when played by the children. Apparently, the granddaughter has also started taking piano lessons. After hearing me play, the wife of the second son was so moved that she decided to have her child learn the piano. I'm subsidizing the monthly piano lessons. The once quiet mansion is now filled with the voices of children, becoming quite lively. I believe my husband would be delighted.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted. dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.